No wonder her husband always came home looking completely exhausted. Ever since he started working with Grandma Bhavana, he hadn't so much as touched her. Every time she tried to bring it up, he'd brush her off, claiming he was too tired and still feeling weak. Hello, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into another chilling real-life story that will leave you speechless. This time, we're heading to Krishnanagar, a city in the state of West Bengal, India. Known for its rich agricultural heritage, this region is a major producer of rice, jute, and various vegetables. Beyond agriculture, Krishnanagar is also renowned for its flourishing clay and ceramic handicraft industry. But today's story isn't about the beauty of this city. It's about a young man pushed to desperate lengths by financial struggles and family pressure. In his quest for money, he found himself entangled in a disturbing arrangement with an older widow, doing unspeakable things for her benefit. What really happened? Stay with us as we uncover the full details of this unsettling case. Let's dive in. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this story with your friends too. It's one you won't want to miss. So here's how the story goes. Bhavana was born and raised in the city of Burdhaman, a place known for its lush rice fields and plantations. Her parents owned a vast amount of land, making their family quite well off. When Bhavana turned 18, she married a young man, despite her father's strong disapproval. The reason? Bhavana was already pregnant at the time. It turned out her father's instincts were spot on. Bhavana's husband was incredibly lazy and refused to work. Their entire livelihood depended on the monthly allowance provided by Bhavana's parents. Even when her father asked his son-in-law to help out in the fields, he came up with endless excuses to avoid it. Eventually, when Bhavana gave birth to their daughter Aishwarya, her husband disappeared without a trace, leaving her to raise their child as a single mother. Over time, Bhavana inherited her parents' wealth and managed the paddy fields and plantations herself, with help from a few workers and relatives. She proved to be resourceful and hardworking, ensuring her family's legacy continued. Aishwarya, however, was not cut from the same cloth. Unlike her mother, she showed little interest in learning about the family business or managing finances. Instead, Aishwarya spent most of her time hanging out with friends or going on outings. When Bhavana encouraged her daughter to go to college, Aishwarya refused, claiming it was pointless since she would eventually just be a housewife. Her behavior often caused headaches for her mother, especially when she disappeared for days at a time without informing anyone, only to later reveal she had been on a staycation with her boyfriend. In 2014, Aishwarya asked for her mother's blessing to marry her boyfriend, Govind, who was 4 years older. Bhavana reluctantly agreed, but she wasn't thrilled. Govind was unemployed, had no savings, and his family was struggling financially. To make matters worse, Aishwarya pressured her mother into footing the entire bill for the wedding. After several delays and disagreements, the wedding finally took place, though not without its own drama. Bhavana only relented when she discovered that Aishwarya was already pregnant. It was a bitter pill for Bhavana to swallow, as history seemed to be repeating itself. The struggles she faced in her youth had now become her daughter's reality. After losing his job, Bhavana suggested that her son-in-law, Govind, take over managing their rice plantation. At first, Govind agreed, but it didn't take long for the constant nagging from his in-laws to get under his skin. Frustrated, he vented to his wife, telling her he didn't want to work there anymore. Instead of handling the responsibilities, he started showing up at the plantation just to lounge around in the gazebo. Sometimes he'd even fall asleep or drive aimlessly around town in the plantation's car. When he was tasked with supervising fertilizer purchases, he'd misuse the money for drinking and gambling. In the end, Govind decided he couldn't work with his father-in-law anymore. He announced he wanted to leave for Krishnanagar, claiming he'd find better opportunities there. By late May 2016, after the birth of their child, Aishwarya and Govind packed up and moved to Krishnanagar. However, the money Mrs. Bhavana had given them was gone within 4 months, spent on rent and other expenses, and Govind was still unemployed. Day after day, he lounged around, wasting time playing games and burning through their internet quota. Unable to provide for his wife and child, he ignored the in-laws' suggestion to return to Bardhaman rather than let his family starve. But Govind stubbornly refused to go back. In November 2016, Govind came up with a bold yet poorly thought-out plan. He convinced his wife to ask her parents for money to start a coffee shop. He claimed to have a natural talent for brewing coffee and a passion for the business. He sweet-talked Aishwarya into persuading her parents to provide the capital for renting a space, buying coffee equipment, and setting up the shop. After much back and forth, Bhavana finally agreed to lend them a significant amount of money. With 2 employees, Govind opened his coffee shop on Krishnanagar City Road. But things didn't go as planned. Whether due to a lack of experience, misplaced trust in his employees, or just plain incompetence, the business started floundering within a year. Equipment broke down, customers stopped coming, and eventually, Govind was left running the place alone. Even then, he struggled with repairs and maintenance. Supplies dwindled, and he couldn't afford to restock coffee beans or other essentials. Instead of reinvesting in the shop, he spent the earnings on his family's daily needs. Desperate, Govind asked Aishwarya to once again borrow money from her parents to rebuild the coffee shop. This time, however, Mrs. Bhavana refused. Determined to set things right, Bhavana traveled from Bardhaman to Krishnanagar herself. She left her farm in the care of Aishwarya's uncle and took it upon herself to teach Govind how to lead wisely, manage a business effectively, and treat customers with respect. Her goal wasn't just to save the coffee shop, but to give Govind the skills he sorely lacked. Eventually, Ms. Bhavana bought the land where the coffee shop stood, built a house there, and began hiring new baristas, talented and, according to her taste, good-looking. Govind was given the reins to run the shop again, but this time under his mother-in-law's sharp supervision. While he wasn't thrilled about it, he had to admit that coffee shops aligned with his interests and hobbies. To make a long story short, once Bhavana took charge of the coffee shop's management, everything started looking up. Her steady hand and business acumen helped turn the place around. The shop became a popular spot in town, buzzing with young people who loved it as a hangout, meeting place, and social hub. By January 2020, Aishwarya gave birth to their second child, and Bhavana was busy helping care for her grandchildren. Despite being 50 years old, Bhavana found herself opening up to love again. She started dating Samir, a 46-year-old widower who worked as a coffee bean distributor. Since meeting Samir, a more playful and light-hearted side of Bhavana began to shine. She even asked her son to teach her how to dress stylishly and confidently for her age. Aishwarya found it amusing but also heartwarming. It was about time her mom found happiness again after decades of hard work as a farmer and widow. Bhavana deserved a fresh chapter in her life. As Bhavana grew more radiant by the day, her charm didn't go unnoticed. She became somewhat of a celebrity in the neighborhood. Men passing by near the coffee shop often showered her with compliments, whether sincere or just playful flattery. She enjoyed the attention. Even simple trips to the market carrying a bag of vegetables would result in someone calling out with a cheeky comment. Bhavana felt on top of the world, a stunning and successful woman who was admired not just for her beauty, but also for her financial independence. But by May 2020, the pandemic hit, and the economic situation grew tough for everyone. Krishnanagar wasn't spared, and Bhavana's coffee shop was no exception. Many sectors of the economy suffered, but Bhavana quickly adapted. She introduced a delivery service to keep sales going. While the shop's revenue wasn't as strong as before, it was enough to cover operational costs and keep the business afloat. Meanwhile, her neighbors like Vikram and his wife Anusha were struggling. Vikram had been laid off from his job at a ceramics factory, and Anusha, who worked at a clothing store in a nearby mall, saw her salary slashed due to the drop in mall visitors. With mounting debts to several neighbors, Vikram and his wife approached Bhavana, asking if he could work at her coffee shop in any position, anything as long as he could earn some money. At first, Bhavana wasn't keen on the idea. She argued that Vikram lacked the necessary experience and worried he'd end up being more of a liability than an asset. Paying someone who might not pull their weight would only add to her expenses. But things took a different turn. Bhavana couldn't help but notice Vikram's warm smile, sharp eyes, and well-built physique. There was something about his toned muscles that made her heart race. Eventually, she gave in and hired him as a customer service representative at the coffee shop. As the days turned into weeks, Bhavana began to lose interest in her boyfriend, Samir. She started seeing him as dull and uninspiring, too old and not her type anymore. Instead, she found herself drawn to Vikram. Bhavana even made him her personal driver, using the excuse that she wanted to explore Krishnanagar in more detail. Wherever she asked to go, Vikram drove her without question. For him, the job was about more than just money. It was about providing for his wife and kids, paying off debts, and keeping his employer happy. But being Bhavana's driver was just the beginning. She soon started treating Vikram as her personal assistant, assigning him all sorts of tasks. Whether it was running errands or fulfilling her every whim, Vikram never refused. His motto was simple: whatever makes the boss happy. As long as his wife and kids could eat, he was willing to do anything. Bhavana, now thoroughly enjoying Vikram's company, would often ask him to stop the car mid-errand for a quick break. These breaks, however, weren't for coffee or sightseeing. They were for massages. At first, Vikram thought it was just part of the job, and since Bhavana always tipped him generously, he didn't mind. But those quick massages gradually turned into longer, more private sessions. Before long, Vikram found himself spending late nights at inns, tending to Bhavana's every need. This whole situation started to take a toll on Anusha. She barely saw her husband, Vikram, at the coffee shop anymore, and he often came home late at night, or sometimes not until the early hours of the morning. When she asked about it, Vikram would give vague answers, saying he was out shopping for cafe supplies, taking Ms. Bhavana on errands, or visiting a faraway customer to hand out discount vouchers. Anusha didn't want to argue with him after his long days, so she just nodded. But deep down, she was suspicious. She even wondered if he had quit the coffee shop altogether or, worse, was seeing another woman. On a Sunday morning in early July 2020, Vikram got ready to leave for work. Anusha, who had the day off, questioned him. "Isn't Sunday a holiday? Why are you working?" He casually replied, "Ms. Bhavana needs me to take her shopping for a bag." Anusha frowned and asked, "A bag? Didn't you say you were buying a bag yesterday?" Vikram, clearly annoyed, said, "I don't know what bag it is. I just do what I'm told. I'm an employee after all." His dismissive tone only deepened her suspicions. Vikram left at 10 a.m., but by 3 p.m., he still wasn't back. Anusha, unable to shake her doubts, went to the coffee shop and asked Govind if he had seen her husband. Govind chuckled and said, "It's normal for your husband to wander around with her. If they're not back by 9 p.m., they've probably gone to an inn again." His comment made Anusha furious and jealous. She tried calling Vikram repeatedly, but he didn't pick up. She sent SMS and WhatsApp messages, but none were read. By nightfall, she was growing desperate. Anusha decided to go to Aishwarya's house and demanded to know where her mother, Bhavana, was. But Aishwarya had no idea, as Bhavana hadn't mentioned her plans. It wasn't until 10 p.m. that someone finally answered Vikram's phone. To Anusha's shock, it was Bhavana on the other end. Instead of explaining, Bhavana scolded her, shouting, "Your husband is working. Don't disturb him." Then she hung up before Anusha could even respond. At 3 a.m. on Monday, Vikram and Bhavana finally returned to the courtyard of their house, which was behind the coffee shop. Both of them looked tipsy. As they stumbled inside, Anusha stepped out from the shadows, seething with anger. She confronted them, and Bhavana coldly retorted, "Your husband works like this so you and your kids can eat." Anusha, overwhelmed with rage, pulled out a fruit cutter she had been hiding and lunged at Bhavana. Vikram tried to intervene, but he, too, was slashed in the chaos. The commotion woke the neighbors, including Govind and Aishwarya, who rushed over to break things up. Bhavana and Vikram were rushed to the hospital, while the neighbors restrained Anusha and took her to the police station. 2 days later, Bhavana succumbed to her injuries and passed away at the hospital. Vikram, however, survived the attack. The tragic incident left the entire neighborhood in shock. During the investigation, it came to light based on Vikram's testimony, that since starting work with Bhavana's grandmother, he had entered into an inappropriate relationship with her. According to Vikram, though, it wasn't about love, it was sheer survival. The pandemic had hit hard, and jobs were scarce. His wife's shop was struggling, with sales so slow that her salary was often delayed. They had bills piling up, rent to pay, and no clear way out. Bhavana's grandmother became their only lifeline, offering a job and a paycheck that kept them afloat. Vikram insisted that his actions were purely driven by desperation. He had no intention of betraying his wife's love. He even tried searching for other jobs but came up empty-handed as nearly every industry was collapsing under the weight of the crisis. Later, he apologized to his wife and family, admitting that his choices had caused a scandal and hurt the people he cared about the most. Meanwhile, since her arrest, Anusha has remained mostly quiet. She rarely speaks, other than expressing her wish to go back to living with her husband. She admitted to being overcome by jealousy and rage when she learned the truth, that Vikram wasn't just working at a coffee shop but was also spending his days attending to Bhavana's grandmother. The pieces fell into place for her. Vikram had been coming home utterly exhausted, and since working with Bhavana's grandmother, he hadn't shown her any affection. Every time she approached him, he claimed to be too tired or still feeling weak. Anusha's lawyer explained that her actions that night were a momentary lapse of control, driven by emotion. To her, the real fault lay with the old woman, who had, as Anusha saw it, stolen her husband. The lawyer argued that Bhavana's grandmother was overbearing, treating Vikram as if hiring him gave her control over every aspect of his life. It wasn't just about the job, it was about power, they claimed. But the blame didn't stop there. Anusha and her lawyer also pointed fingers at Bhavana's children, Aishwarya and Govind, accusing them of knowing about their mother's behavior and choosing to turn a blind eye. However, the siblings denied the allegations and pushed back. They argued that they had no idea what their mother and Vikram were doing when they disappeared for hours on end, as both had been dishonest about their whereabouts. Anusha knew from the start that she was facing a harsh punishment. After all, Bhavana's grandmother had lost her life. Things got worse when the prosecutor presented evidence showing that the act had been carefully planned. It was clear to everyone, including Anusha, that the case wasn't looking good for her. She felt hopeless, like there was no point in fighting anymore. So when Nathan's lawyer brought up the idea of also charging Vikram with misconduct, Anusha refused. It wasn't because she felt sorry for him. She didn't. Her concern was for their child. She wanted someone to be there to care for him, and despite everything, she believed Vikram was the better option. He was close to their son, and even though the grandparents were around, she felt Vikram would do a better job raising him. Anusha's trial dragged on for months, delayed by the pandemic, until it finally took place in mid-March 2021 at the Krishnanagar High Court. In the end, the judge found her guilty. She was convicted of intentionally and premeditatedly preparing a weapon to kill Bhavana's grandmother. Her sentence: life in prison. Fast forward to January 2022. News spread around Krishnanagar that Vikram had left their son with Anusha's parents, claiming he was headed to Bangkok to look for work. But 2 months later, he showed up at the detention center to visit Anusha, not with news of his job search, but to ask for a separation. Vikram told her he couldn't handle being alone anymore. He wanted to be single, free of any responsibilities, so he could reflect on his life in peace. With a heavy heart, Anusha agreed. She signed the papers, officially ending their marriage, thinking it was what Vikram needed to find clarity. But less than a week later, her parents discovered the truth. Vikram had remarried. The whole introspection story had been a sham. Anusha's parents were furious, saying Vikram should have just been honest and divorced her from the beginning. What lessons can we learn from this story?